From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Good morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast, Thursday, May 16th, 2024. Welcome. It's been a busy week. I'm sure everyone's recovered. You know, one of the common themes around LinkedIn this week's been anyone who's been at RSA finally starting to recover on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It takes that long, especially if you're from the East Coast going to the West Coast, and the long nights that go on in San Francisco, your body gets thrown off completely. But if you're awake, you're joining us this morning, good morning, welcome. We've got a packed show for all of y'all today, a lot going on. So let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do, please make sure to go check out our Substack. I just dropped a brand new article last night called The Importance of CISO Tenure in Building a Resilient Cybersecurity Posture. My claim for leadership to really take the position of CISO extremely, extremely seriously. So I hope you go tune in. You can support our show by going to our Substack. There's a way for you to support us there as well. And when you do support us, we get you a very beautiful espresso travel mug. So very excited about that. And we're making great progress with the studio. We'll have a really cool reel once the studio is all said and done here, and make it rock and roll. So without further ado, join me for our double espresso this morning to power us through. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. Good cup of coffee. Let's go ahead and get the show going with the FBI seizing the notorious BreachForum hacking forum that's leaked and stolen thousands, if not millions, if not tens or hundreds of millions of corporate data to other criminals. The seizure occurred Wednesday morning on the 15th of May, soon after the site was used last week to leak stolen data from the Europol law enforcement portal. The website is now displaying a message stating that the FBI is taking control over it and the backend data indicating that law enforcement seized both the site servers and domains hosting it. The website has been taken down by the FBI and DOJ with assistance from international partners. The seizure notice read, if you missed the seizure notice, if you scroll all the way back to the hold slide before music started, that's literally it. And it's on the cover, so you can go check it out there. We're reviewing the site's backend data. If you have any information to report about cyber criminal activity on a BreachForum, they're asking people to contact them. If law enforcement did gain access to the backend data as they claimed to have, then they'd likely have email addresses, IP addresses, and private messages that could help law enforcement gain insights into the identity of members of the forum. The FBI also seized the site's Telegram channel and other channels owned by the Baphomet, with law enforcement sending messages stating it's under their control. So some of the messages on the Telegram came directly from the account, likely indicating the threat actor was arrested and his device is now in the hands of law enforcement. So there's that. In a Telegram message shared with Bleeping Computer, the threat actor known as Intel Brokers claiming that Baphomet was arrested in the law enforcement operation. Again, Intel Broker being the guy who's been really kind of wreaking havoc in terms of leaking data. BreachForum was the successor for a string of different forums that were used to trade, sell, and leak stolen data, as well as sell access to corporate networks. Excuse me. All right, I thought I was going to sneeze. The first of these sites was known as BreachForums, which initially launched in 2015, became the largest site for distributing stolen data. That site was seized, and police arresting the owner, called Omnipotent. Soon after that, one of its more active members, Pompurian, created a new forum called Breach to fill the void. That site quickly grew in popularity. Then they were caught, and so forth. And so does our cycle continue. But the FBI seizing it, that's good news all in all. The ransomware for the city of Wichita in Kansas just keeps getting worse by the moment. The city of Wichita is now warning residents that the gang behind the recent ransomware attack likely stole sensitive law enforcement information. What they're talking about is potential law enforcement incident and traffic information, which could include names, social security numbers, driver's license or state identification card numbers, and payment card information. noting that the attackers got in through a recently disclosed security vulnerability that affected organizations throughout the world. They did not say which vulnerability that was, but you can only assume there's only a handful of those right now that impact these types of organizations. Could be Avanti, could be a few others. Wichita officials have said that there's no timetable for when some of these affected systems will be brought back online. Police officers have had to keep paper records, and all city official offices have had to revert to cash payments in lieu of access to credit card systems. I think we should go stay to cash. I mean, why use credit cards? The Lockit Ransomware gang recently took credit for the incident, but yesterday claimed to have sold the data to an undisclosed buyer. The Lockit operation has been hobbled by law enforcement operation against its infrastructure. So they may have been the ones to get in, post it, but then sell it off to someone else to run the negotiation and potentially make a name for themselves using this one. The city of St. Helena in California yesterday also published a notice warning that there are victims of a cyber attack and their systems are also down. Macon County here in Georgia, it's Macon and Bibb County also reporting a ransomware attack. It's rampant. It's happening all over the place. So, there's got to be something to be done, and you can't just look at practitioners and hope and pray that they're the ones that can get it done there as well. Patch Tuesday was really, really awkward. One, Schneider Electric didn't post anything. They still haven't, last I checked. But now Intel's publishing their advisory for their Patch Tuesday, and they're addressing 90 different vulnerabilities with 41 new security updates. And some of these are really unbelievable. One of which has a CVSS score of 10. That's CVE 2024-22476. It's been identified in the neural compressor, an AI product that performs model optimization to reduce the model size and increase the speed of deep learning interference for deployment on CPUs or GPUs. Intel says this critical vulnerability would allow an unauthenticated attacker to enable escalation of privileges via remote access. High severity flaws were found in the UEFI firmware of server products, Arc and Iris, XC Graphics, ProSet Wireless, Power Gadgets, Trust Domain Extension, Secure Device Manager, Dynamic Tuning Technology, Thunderbolt Graphic Performing Analyzers, BIOS Guard, and Platform Property Assessment Module, and the Ethernet Controller I225 manageability products. These flaws can allow privilege escalation, denial of service, or information disclosure. Again, a whole bunch of medium severity vulnerabilities and that have been addressed on multiple different products and programs within Intel. You want to make sure you get those addressed ASAP. Recorded Futures reporting and raising an alarm for a malicious campaign abusing a legitimate GitHub profile to distribute information stealing malware. As part of the campaign, the Russian-speaking threat actors operating out of the Commonwealth Independent States, formerly known as CIS countries, so anything that was former Soviet Union, has been distributing atomic macOS stealer, Viter, Luma, and Octo malware by impersonating legitimate applications like 1Password, a Bartender 5, and a Pixelmator Pro. The malware operations shared the same CNC infrastructure, suggesting that this was a centralized setup and a cross-platform attack likely to increase efficiency, according to Recorded Future. Early in 2024, industry reporting showed that Amos was being distributed through deceptive websites impersonating legitimate macOS applications, including installation file for Slack, via fraudulent Web3 gaming project. Now, they're using these reports as a starting point. According to Recorded Future, they've identified 12 websites with advertising legitimate macOS software, but redirecting victims to a GitHub profile, distributing Amos instead. So, all in all, they've also seen FileZilla FTP servers being used for malware management and for distributing the Luma and VDAR information stealer. In addition, they've discovered several IP addresses associated with the campaign, including 4 IPs associated with the CNC infrastructure for the Dark Comet RAT and the FileZilla FTP server. All in all, something to pay attention to and definitely mitigate immediately within your environment. Apple posting some really, really interesting statistics in their fight against fraud and credit card fraud on the Apple platform. All in all, they say that they've stopped over $7 billion over the last 4 years in potential fraudulent transactions. From 2020 to 2023, they've also detected 14 million stolen cards and blocked them from transacting, along with blocking 3.3 million accounts. Statistics for last year show that Apple stopped 1.8 billion in suspicious transactions, slightly less than the 2 billion blocked in 2022. The report also notes that Apple prevented throughout 2023 the use of 3.5 million stolen credit cards for purchases made on its App Store and banned over 1.1 million accounts from transacting again. Their app security and privacy policy enforcement, Apple rejected last year over 1.7 million app submissions that failed to meet Apple Store standard for privacy, security, and content. Among them, 248,000 were rejected for being either spam, copycat, or misleading users. 38,000 were rejected for containing hidden or undocumented features. 375,000 were rejected for various privacy violations. 47,000 were rejected for being illegitimate apps of pirate storefronts. 40,000 were removed or rejected because they engaged in bait and switch tactics, and 98,000 were deemed potentially fraudulent and were proactively blocked. Hey, people at the Google Play Store, take note. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. There you go. Proof's in the pudding. These numbers don't lie, according to Apple. The app review team consists of 500 experts that examined 6.9 million app submissions just last year alone that led to rejecting of 1.7 million requests. Additionally, Apple terminated 118,000 accounts and turned down 91,000 all in all. Customer accounts have also found to be fraudulent 153 million or engaged in illegal activities, which led to the blocking or deactivating. All in all, Apple has done a magnificent job of keeping their App Store safe. This is definitely backing it up. Phishing emails that are mimicking DocuSign are rising thanks to a thriving underground marketplace of fake templates and login credentials. Over the past month, researchers from Abnormal Security claim to have tracked a significant increase in phishing attacks designed to mimic legitimate DocuSign requests. A quick trip down the rabbit hole took them to a Russian cybercrime forum where sellers peddled a variety of templates resembling authentic emails and documents. They're leading them to essentially forge a blackmail scheme. So everybody's being conditioned, especially after some time in the workplace. The DocuSign links look a certain way. And so they're using that to achieve that perfect look and feel necessary to lull victims in autopilot. An attacker might take the time to craft a legitimate looking DocuSign email and document template from scratch. Amateur, lazy, overworked, or simply logical or efficient hackers might instead purchase ready-made malicious ones from online marketplaces. They'll then send those to their victims, and then they'll try to use those in order to blackmail the victims as saying, you've signed a contract and we're going to blackmail you. And they can use information from employee contracts, vendor agreements, or payment information as a fodder for blackmail or in extortion attacks. For example, an attacker can time out a request for remittance around the time a company typically pays its vendor every month. Using information from a compromised employee's DocuSign history, they can impersonate a direct superior or vendor finance department's point person, attach specific real documents to the email for reference, and do that as well. So they're getting really, really sophisticated. Make sure you've got right processes in place for that as well. The anticipated boost in security budgets is coming according to a KPMG study around security operations, where some CISOs have claimed to see a 20% increase over the next 2 years in their security operation budget. Part of that will probably likely be coming because of the SEC disclosure reporting incidents and some of the other regulation in play. We'll see if that actually improves anything there either. The EU's failure to rein in spyware reflects the lack of political will, according to a recent conference. A parliamentarian, Sophie in 't Veld, who led the EU's parliament investigation into the use of spyware in Spain, Greece, and Poland, said EU governments haven't curtailed it because they lack the political will to act. No, honey, they don't. What they lack is the fact that they need spyware. It's essential for them. They're not going to ban it. They're not going to put it under review. It's critical for their national security. And as such, they're going to keep it that way. The general, ban on spyware for civil and human rights, or trying to go after NSO or anyone else that does that, these companies wouldn't create it if there wasn't a demand for it. And whether or not, and no government's going to curtail its own surveillance in order to please a bunch of people. They're just going to shelf it. It's going to cause an impasse. One point, some guys will want it, others won't. The other point, it'll go back and forth, and there'll never really be any control over it. If you fail to see that, Europe, just look at the FISA act that keeps getting pushed here and renewed every 2 years like clockwork, irregardless to the fact that it's really unconstitutional and it's overextended and so forth. Spyware is there. It's there to stay. There are governments that want to use it. Those governments aren't going to stop using it. They're not going to put anything against it. They're not going to put guidelines around it, because what a lot of people are starting to realize is your adversaries, China, Iran, the Muslim Brotherhood, North Korea, are watching this, in Russia, and they're watching the guidelines that democracies put in place, and then they're abusing it. They're playing within that area. And so you've got to have some parts where, in order to defend democracy, there's a dark hole. This is one of those. That's spyware. I'm sorry. And finally, in our final news, a major rumble is brewing in the SIM space, with LogRhythm now announcing plans to merge with rival Exabeam. Exabeam was last pegged at a recent valuation of $2.5 billion. LogRhythm being one of the larger SIM vendors, and was in a Thomas Bravo private equity stable, said the deal will combine impressive technologies in threat detection, investigation, and response to the IR category. The merged entities promising customers will benefit from enhanced R&D investment and product innovation. All in all, more consolidation happening in the marketplace. That's it for our program this morning. Tomorrow, Friday, 11 a.m., Chris Falone and I will be talking frameworks. I'm taking CIS Top 20. I think he's going to take the NIST framework. We'll be talking about that. That'll air live right here on all your favorite platforms. So make sure to come and check that out. Go subscribe to our channel, check out our Substack, and most importantly, y'all have a great rest of your day and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.